What is a portrait? Is it just a picture of someone, or can it be more than that? These are some of the questions that artist and photographer Dawoud Bey asked Detroit area high school students back in 2003 when he was an artist in residence at the Detroit Institute of Arts. You're seeing just a few of the portraits from his sessions shot on-site at Detroit's Chadsey High School. Dawoud had explained further to his students, portraits are more than just a picture of someone, and for him, portraits are collaborations with his subjects, and they explore the physical, psychological, and emotional characteristics that define human presence. Hello, I'm Nancy Barr, the Curator of Photography at the Detroit Institute of Arts. I'm working from home these days, and the museum asks curators to create videos about our favorite works in the DIA's collection. The first thing that came to my mind were these photographs by Dawoud, which were created during a 2003 residency sponsored by the museum. The portraits were also part of an exhibition at the museum in 2004, and several have remained part of the DIA's permanent collection. And I can't believe it's been 17 years since the residency and exhibition, because it really seems like it was just yesterday. It was memorable for me, and I often think of it and Dawoud, who remained a friend and mentor, along with the high school students, all remarkable Detroiters who I got to know on my weekly visits to the school. I first met Dawoud while working on the exhibition Reflections in Black, A History of Black Photographers. It was the first comprehensive survey exhibition of African American photography organized by the scholar and photographer Deborah Willis for the Smithsonian Institution. We opened it at the DIA in 2001. Dawoud's early portraits of teenagers were included, and I had invited him to the DIA to lecture on his work. We discussed the residency during his visit. At this point in his career, Dawoud's photography was mostly concerned with portraiture and issues of representation, as well as his efforts to give African Americans and teenagers more visibility. He often photographed people he met in public spaces. And by the early 1990s, he'd begun a series of residency programs with art museums and high schools across the U.S. Dawoud had emphasized to me that portraits were a way to document and tell the story of young Americans at a particular time in history, but he also knew that his work could activate the spaces of art museums in different ways and engage young people and people of color, as well as create more meaningful dialogues between art institutions and the communities that they serve. Dawoud had mentioned to me an early experience influencing his thinking about art museums and photography with the 1969 exhibition Harlem on My Mind at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. The exhibition featured photographic murals of African American life in Harlem, New York, but it drew criticism from the Harlem art community, in part because it didn't feature work by Black artists. As the exhibition controversy grew, it caught young Dawoud Bey's attention, and he went to see the show. Aside from seeing the work of Harlem photographer James Vanderzee, who became an influence, he still thought the photographs in the exhibition didn't really show the Harlem he knew. Bey was born in Queens, New York, but his parents had lived in Harlem, and he frequently visited relatives there. To better reflect the Harlem he knew, from 1975 to 1979, he created his first photographic series, Harlem, USA, in response to this. In 2003, as we worked towards starting the residency, Dawoud selected Chadsey High School, which was in a working-class industrial neighborhood in southwest Detroit. The school has since been demolished and a new educational facility built on its site. But in 2003, the student body at Chadsey was one of the most diverse and distinct in the district and reflected the neighborhood that surrounded it. In addition to Detroiters, the school hosted students from Mexico and Puerto Rico, as well as countries in Asia, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East. As part of the program, we also asked the students to be interviewed about their lives and to share their personal stories. Excerpts from the interviews would hang side by side their portraits at the museum. These texts, their voices, help to tell their stories. And here are just a few of the portraits, now part of the DI's collection, along with some excerpts from those interesting interviews. This here is Aureliano. It's a quiet, young, serious scholar committed to his family and future college studies in engineering. Like other students who were first-generation Americans, he missed his homeland. And in his interview, he recalled growing up in his native Mexico, very different from Detroit. I lived in a small town where everyone knows you and where you can walk around without being scared of people. I played with my friends mostly all day. We played soccer, we climbed trees. This is Yamani, another senior who was obsessed with his grade point, and he mentioned in his interview, when I came to school, I started off rocky in the ninth grade. I ended the year with a 3.0. Up to my 11th grade year, in the middle of my 10th grade year, I had a 4.0. And I knew if I could do this, I could do anything. Georgina was a typical teenager who expressed her love of everyday life. I like to sing a lot. I like to work a lot, have fun, meet new people, work with children, go to church. I like to talk to guys. They're really fun. And that's who I am. Back at the DIA, we decided to put Dawoud's installation, his portraits, in several galleries usually reserved for American art before 1950. Dawoud's installation space was made more contemporary with clean white walls, but it was still nearby other galleries which were designed as historical period rooms where paintings and decorative arts from the DIA's permanent collection were installed. Dawoud's exhibition was new territory for the DIA and took place at an exciting time for the museum. We were planning a large-scale museum-wide reinstallation of our permanent collection galleries for 2007. The staff tried new things to better engage our audiences in different ways. It's something we've continued to do with our exhibitions since. We've had a lot of success with this. Dawoud Bey's Detroit Portraits opened at the Detroit Institute of Arts on April 4, 2004. The exhibition included the Chadsey portraits, the biographical texts, and Dawoud's first video. It was called 4 Stories. The video was a large-scale projection that focused on close-up expressions and facial features of students, and here it is at left, who, as they spoke and told their personal stories, was in a separate media room. And Dawoud often said to me that people who did not usually visit museums really needed a reason to visit, and that all we had to do was give them a reason to visit. An opening event for the families and students took place at the DIA. Many were seeing the portraits for the first time and visiting the museum for the first time. 18 of the photographs were included in the exhibition, all large, measuring 40 by 50 inches, so very similar in scale to many of the painted historical portraits of Americans of status and wealth found elsewhere in our galleries. And what was the real difference here? Well, they were photographs, of course, not paintings, but they showed contemporary people and represented a very different and diverse America. In the end, they showed us that museums could be places where everyone was welcome and important. The museum-based projects and residencies at high schools focused on a growing new generation of young Americans that we know today as the millennials. When Dawoud started his project in Detroit in 2003, smartphones and social media were not yet a phenomenon. George W. Bush was president, and the U.S. had just invaded Iraq. In Detroit, a young politician, Kwame Kilpatrick, was in the middle of his first term as mayor of the city. There was definitely renewed energy in Detroit, and change was in the air. Dawoud's work from residencies at American high schools was brought together in a publication and traveling exhibition called Class Pictures, organized by the Aperture Foundation in New York City. Dawoud felt the series played on the idea of the conventional high school class picture that might have ended up in a yearbook, but it also set out to describe the population of a certain age that cut across lines of class, race, and gender. Selections from Dawoud's Detroit residency were part of the Class Pictures project, which traveled to museums across the U.S. In recent years, Dawoud has finished several new series and achieved critical recognition for his work as an artist. In 2016, he completed the series, Harlem Redo, in response to the changes and development taking place in that community. In 2018, he released another important series, The Birmingham Project, featuring contemporary portraits. The series reconsiders and honors the lives of 4 African-American children killed in the 1963 bombing at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. His most recent series, Night Coming Tenderly, examines the landscape of the Underground Railroad. In 2017, I got great news that Dawoud had received the Genius Award from the MacArthur Foundation, and at present, he's currently the subject of a large-scale survey exhibition organized by the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. He's busy, but he still takes time to stop and visit in Detroit now and then, and was here last year for another great lecture. I really enjoyed looking back today and reliving Dawoud Bey's residency project here in Detroit. Thank you so much for joining me, and we hope to see you back in the museum soon. Thanks again, and bye.